Welcome one, welcome all to the Politics of Cinema. We are not your typical film review podcast. On this show, we believe that films are cultural artifacts. There's a political as well as artistic message captured in each and every film, and we're on the lookout for all of it. My name is Aaron Spears.
And my name is Isaac Miller. And in this episode, we're checking in with our February Watch Challenge and announcing our March one as well.
So we should recap, I guess, as we go here, what the February challenge was, Isaac?
Yeah.
All right. Well, we put them in order, so let's start them off in order. For the month of February, we were inspired by the Criterion Channel. They had a whole collection called Afrofuturism, which was new to me as like a film genre. So we decided, hey, let's jump into there and check out what Criterion was offering for Afrofuturism. What did you, or what film would you like to highlight from what you watched in that category, Isaac?
Well, two, and they're both shorts.
Hey, both of mine are shorts too.
The shorts are really good. Actually, no, that's not true. The Last Angel of History, which isn't really, it's 45 minutes, so that's not really short, but it's very short, which is both a documentary about sort of the connection between Afrofuturism and the Black experience, and science fiction and the Black experience, and music, specifically sort of techno and George Clinton and Sun Ra and others as well, combined with a story of a Black time traveler looking for like the essence of culture. It's really good. It's from the mid 90s, and I'd strongly suggest it. It's and then I also watched, this is actually really a short, The Changing Same, which also sort of deals with sort of the experience of alienation in society through two aliens who come to Earth as observers. Both of those I would strongly recommend.
I think I mentioned on the previous show or when we were talking about what the categories were going to be for this particular watch challenge, but short films always seem like they need more love. And the fact that there was short films as part of this collection, I was really drawn to those as well because it was like, oh, I'm done with my commitments to the Film Festival Selection Committee, so I'm not seeing shorts on a regular basis now. And I was like, ooh, I want to check some of these out here. I went for the first one I watched was 1968, less than symbol, 2018, greater than symbol, 2068. So I'm not 100% sure how to read that title, but those are the symbols and the numbers that are in the title. It's from 2018, directed by Keisha Ray Witherspoon. I don't get this movie, but I watched it a few times. It's only 7 minutes long. And Keisha used clips from a book called Black Quantum Futurism, Theory and Practice, which sounds very intriguing, but I imagine is way over my head, intellectually and academically speaking. So it's a book that deals with the idea of how we experience time, memory, and trauma. And since the dates in the title are 1968, 2018, and 2068, it's clips from this book, Black Quantum Futurism, along with a lot of archival footage. And it's wildly surreal, and there's a lot there. I said I watched it a few times because the first time I watched it, I was just like, wait, what the hell did I just watch? It's that kind of movie. But it's really intriguing. And so the second time through, I ignored the visuals on screen. I closed my eyes and I just listened to it. So I was just hearing what the quotes were from the book and kind of thinking about it that way. And then the third time through, I muted it, so I was only seeing the visuals. I don't know. There's a lot there to chew on. I would recommend watching it because it's only 7 minutes, and why not? But I don't really have like a huge analysis of that one because it's definitely, it has, and I mean this in like the most positive way, it has like that student film vibe where like the director's trying to do a lot in a very small period of time, and it's packed. It's packed. And the other one that was a more simple narrative, and I don't mean simple in a bad way, it was just a very well executed, simple, straightforward narrative, was called Afronauts from 2014, directed by Francis Bodemo. It's about the July 16th, 1969, when NASA was sending the first humans to the moon. So this follows a ragtag group of Zambian exiles as they try to beat NASA to the moon. And the best way I could describe it would be, like Max Fisher and Rushmore.
Yeah.
How he puts on like the overly elaborate plays that have resources far beyond like, well, how did this high school student wait, what are they doing? It has that kind of vibe where like, it's just all creativity and gusto and passion. and they're, they send somebody to the moon. It's a really, I mean, I was just smiling the whole time. It's like maybe 15, 16 minutes long, and it's a really fun kind of what if flight of fancy. Like the rocket ship looks like, a couple of garbage cans, welded together with a point on top. Like it's such a DIY awesome bit of movie making. I loved it. Fun fact too, it's shot by Joshua James Richards, who is the cinematographer for Nomadland, which is getting a lot of praise right now because it just was released in theaters and digital.
Okay. All right. I'm
So-
gonna have to check it out.
It's good. It's good. And like I said with the shorts, you just throw it on when you're, eating some lunch one day or whatever, and it's a good one. Second category we had for this month was Black female filmmakers. Wanted to highlight some Black female filmmakers. That gave me the excuse I needed because I've been meaning to rewatch 1997 Cassie Lemon's film, debut feature, in fact, Eve's Bayou.
Memory is a selection of images. Some elusive, others printed indelibly on the brain.
Daddy loves you so much.
I know.
We'll dance at every party.
Each image is like a thread. Each thread woven together to make a tapestry of intricate texture.
When I first met Louis, I said to myself, he's a healer. He'll take care of me.
Do you still love her?
Men fought each other for the privilege of speaking her name.
And the tapestry tells a story.
And I find out he's just a man.
You're in trouble. They're really mad.
Who, them? They always mad.
And the story is our past.
I'll never forgive you if you drive him away.
The summer I killed my father, I was 10 years old.
I saw Daddy. What? Daddy and Mrs. Moreau. Don't get lost.
What's wrong with her?
Oh, she'll be all right.
Have you told anyone? Because if you tell, I swear I'll do you harm.
You know I love my sister, but she's not unfamiliar with the inside of a mental hospital.
Sunday, which one of your patients you gonna see, Louis?
What was wrong with that lady?
Some illness hard to put a finger on.
Not every night he's not working. I know he's not.
She thinks I'm driving you away.
She's a child, Rob.
How do you kill someone with voodoo?
I put his hair inside the wax coffin. Buried it in the graveyard. That's ridiculous.
You want to face the dead?
But you can't kill people with voodoo. Sometimes a soldier falls on his own sword.
Yes.
I remember seeing it in '97 because it was Roger Ebert's movie of the year. I think he picked it as best film of the year, and he's not wrong. It's astounding. It's set in rural Louisiana, 1962. It's the affluent Batiste family. They've been around the area for a very, very long time, but it's all through the point of view of Eve, played by Jurnee Smollett, who most recently was Black Canary in Birds of Prey. She's the middle child of a very affluent family where Samuel Jackson is her mom, or I'm sorry, Samuel Jackson is her dad, and he is a respected and famous local doctor who's kind of the toast of the town and can kind of just get away with whatever he wants to. And he's cheating on his wife. But it mixes in voodoo, superstition, abuse of power, childhood misunderstandings of what adults are doing. It's this awesome mix, and it's all through Eve's point of view. She's the middle child and maybe like 11 or 12 at the time. And that being the audience character gives the whole movie this like kind of like perspective of innocence the whole way through. But it's also like how innocence is shattered as a child slowly realizes, oh, this father I've been idolizing maybe isn't the idol I thought he was. But yeah, it mixes it. It's a deep Southern kind of gothic drama. But her aunt does fortune telling. There's like a voodoo priestess, I guess. I don't know the hierarchies and labels within voodoo. Down in the old bayou, there's like all the cinematography is just gorgeous. That like the swamp, the kind of hanging trees, the whole vibe of it just has like hot Southern gothic to the whole thing. It's great.
Awesome. See, I like that we totally watch different movies.
What did you watch? Oh, wait. Can I guess?
Yeah, go for it.
Is this your I finally watched a Watermelon Woman category?
I finally watched Watermelon Woman category.
Hi, I'm Cheryl, and I'm a filmmaker. Nah, I'm not really a filmmaker, but I have a videotaping business with my friend Tamara, and I work at a video store, so I'm working on being a filmmaker. The problem is I don't know what I want to make a film on. I know it has to be about black women because our stories have never been told. So I've been renting movies. No, I haven't been renting movies, but I get movies from the video store that I work at, And I've taken all these films out from the 30s and 40s with black actresses in them, like Hattie McDaniel and Louise Beavers. And in these films, in some of the films, the black actresses aren't even listed in the credits. And I was just totally shocked by that. So in this one film that came into the store, Plantation Memories, I saw the most beautiful black mammy named Elsie. Her name, the Watermelon Woman. That's right, Watermelon Woman. Is Watermelon Woman her first name, her last name, or is it her whole name? I don't know, but girlfriend has it going on, and I think I've figured out what my project's gonna be on. I'm gonna make a movie about her. I'm gonna find out what her real name is, who she was and is, everything I can find out about her. Because something in her face, something in the way she looks and moves is serious, is interesting. And I'm gonna just tell you all about it.
And I definitely want to watch the rest of Cheryl Dunier's movies now. Totally live up to expectations. This is a film about basically the director. It's once again from the mid-90s. That seems to be a theme for me recently.
Oh, yeah.
She's a young black woman who's a lesbian working in a movie store, and it deals with who's making a documentary about the Watermelon Woman, who is basically a famous black actress from the 30s who basically played mammy roles. And she's making a documentary about this person. This is a fictional character, but of course is based off of like Hattie McDaniels or, all these,
Oh, yeah.
And it's sort of, it deals with sort of, themes of, lesbian culture in the mid-90s, but also sort of interracial dating specifically, and the sort of the complexities there, but then also sort of the sense of your history, right? She is sort of exploring these things through film as a filmmaker, but also there's more having to do with sort of her sexuality and so forth, that she sort of explores more about this actress and discovers more about her. And it takes some I don't really want to get into it, but it takes some left turns that you don't really expect, and it ends up being quite powerful. I mean, it's actually very pleasurable. I mean, it's one of these movies that's it's an indie of an indie, right? This is you and your friends level thing, and you're basically playing yourself, but it's very good. It's very, very good, and is exploring, to a certain degree, exploring those compromises and those compromises to a deeply white supremacist entertainment culture that forced black artists into these positions, and then how do you sort of regain yourself as well? I mean, there's a lot going on. By the end of it, you realize there's a lot of different things being sort of combined here into a whole. And yeah, I would strongly recommend it.
Yeah, it is one of those like 90s ones that's always references like a landmark of that new queer cinema that popped up there in the 90s, that was tied very much into the independent film scene that was booming at that point in time. I will have to catch that one because I have not watched that one.
Well, you know what? I have now.
There we go.
So I can
so you can rub it in.
Exactly.
That movie too, if I'm remembering correctly, in the 90s, there was a little bit of I guess I don't consider it controversial, but I think it had like National Endowment for the Arts funding.
Okay, I didn't,
And there was that conservative, that's always the conservatives, isn't it? Why is art even financed? Blah, blah, whatever. I can't believe you're financing this stuff. Yeah. It says March 1996. Yeah, there was a criticism that the NEA was providing any sort of funding at all. They got a whole $31,000 towards the budget of making this movie.
Out of control.
Yeah, it's just crazy. Look at that crazy spending that was going on.
I mean,
but you're right though. On a budget of 300,000, like that is clearly that's the mark of an independent DIY production.
Well, it doesn't surprise me that it would be caught in 90s culture wars, in which I think a movie basically about a black lesbian exploring the deep history of racism in our popular culture. I can imagine that not going over so well. I mean, that's just
Nope.
It's an inherently by all these things, it's a political movie, but it's also a slice of life movie, and which I enjoy that, right? I enjoy movies where there's a lot of hanging out.
Yeah, absolutely.
this is a movie that does that well.
All right, so let me ask you a question since you've seen it and I haven't. I'm not going to give the guy any credit, but a conservative, I'm just going to go ahead and say conservative douchebag from Michigan, a guy, said, quote, "The serious possibility that taxpayer money is being used to fund the production and distribution of patently offensive and possibly pornographic movies really pissed him off." Would you say this is a pornographic movie?
I mean, if you believe that part of showing the relationship between two adults involves a sex scene, and you believe if you believe that having a sex scene in a film is inherently pornographic between two women, then yes. But since I don't think that, I think it's about having a grown-up movie for grown-ups about grown-up shit. And since we're not terrified of like human bodies doing what they do, not so much.
Right.
But I can see that if you're a broken, twisted person out of touch with themselves, and yet probably, with all sorts of sexual hang-ups because you don't really express yourself properly. Wait, am I going? Okay, anyway, then maybe you would think that.
Yeah.
Or if you're if you're a bigoted piece of shit.
That's kind of seems like the way this guy is. This is the way this guy sounds. One of the clickable links on his Wikipedia profile is anti-Muslim comments, which I'm not gonna read because fuck that guy. But no, it's you're right. I think there's that 90s. It just reeks of that 90s culture war. Shenanigans. We'll say.
It's a very specific thing. I'm sure they would hate this stuff now, but like the battle's so lost on that front. Well, I'm being a little too. Yeah, it still wouldn't have the same. It wouldn't have the same quality. Let's put it that way.
Right. Excellent. One of the other categories, the third category we had was a Spike Lee movie you've always meant. I'm sorry. Let me do this properly. My apologies to Mr. Lee. A Spike Lee joint you've always meant to watch.
So Spike Lee. We are gonna when we cover Spike Lee more thoroughly. I'm gonna have to grill his politics. And shift his politics through his films. And because he's
watched one of his most overtly political ones, I think.
Well, I started talking about like sort of his there's stuff you can nail him for later on. This movie on the other hand, so it's interesting. I realized that I had an unintentional theme here.
Oh, what's that?
Well, I watched Bamboozled. So I watched two movies in which you have Black filmmakers interrogating the history of Black people in film, and specifically through minstrelsy. Well, I mean, through minstrelsy and mammydom, which is not unrelated, obviously. So Bamboozled, I had not seen it before. If you have not seen it, it is a satire in which a Black TV writer, I guess, who is desperately actually trying to get fired, decides that the best way to do that is to pitch a modern minstrel show, and instead it becomes a hit.
I want a show that will make headlines. The Huxtables, Cosby, a genius, revolutionary, but we can't go down that road again.
The network does not want to see Negroes on television unless they are buffoons.
Have you ever thought about just quitting?
I have a contract. The only way I get out of that is if I get fired, and that is what I intend to do.
I know you're familiar with minstrel shows, variety shows, like In Living Color.
Right. That was dope.
Man Tan, the new millennium minstrel show.
We're gonna need a little more money for this.
This could be bigger than Friends, Ally McBeal, even my boys Amos and Andy.
Yeah.
You're putting white actors in blackface?
We're using black actors with blacker faces.
This fall.
Right on, man.
Yeah, great show.
You won't believe what's coming to your television.
Sleep and Eat and Mantan are lazy and unemployed.
Do your stuff.
But we are certainly not saying anything about the entire African American community.
What's sweeping the nation? And what's coloring the way you see the world.
Yo, we can't let this injustice go by, man. Not this time, man.
You know what I'm saying?
Nah, man. You know what I'm saying? You know what I mean? You know what I'm saying?
He's obviously playing with network and the producers. It is an incredibly powerful and difficult film.
I never thought about the producer's angle. You're totally right.
Yeah, I mean, I think of the producers first in that
Yeah,
case.
you're right. You're right.
And it's an incredibly powerful film. It's a lot. I haven't totally processed all of it. Yeah, he's messing with a lot of things at a lot of levels. There's a lot going on there.
Yeah.
It's just a reminder that basically, American popular culture in general is born in a lot of ways through minstrelsy, right? You can't avoid this propaganda that was designed to demean black people and make white people feel okay with the racial order that they were under, among a lot of other things. I mean, it's in the popular culture at every level.
Yeah.
And so which is, one of these, there's a lot of uncomfortable racial realities to our popular culture, both in terms of music and in terms of film and, a lot of other art forms as it flows in. But, I think this is one of the ones that we sort of ignore. I mean, if you watch older movies, it will show up. It'll be there. But, I don't think most of us actually confront on a regular basis the degree to which this is like foundational.
Right. 'Cause I think it's like you said, it's so pervasive that like you kind of, even with those of us with the best intentions, like don't even really notice it sometimes. I mean, looking back on history, I mean, like
Yeah.
I do my best to like notice it in real time now, but like going back, like I mean, watching a lot of film history stuff, it does pop up in ways where like, oh, I've seen this movie before. How did I not notice that before? Like, yeah, it's so ingrained, it's so woven in that it's
Yeah, I know. It's the foundation of our popular music. It's the first talkie is a blackface minstrel movie.
Oh, Jazz Singer, yeah.
And you can't really escape it. So I think Bamboozled, I'm glad I watched it.
Yeah.
I'm sort of working through the full implications of what he's trying to do. Probably gonna have to watch it again.
I mean, we'll definitely have to be covering Spike at some point in the show, or throughout the life of the show, and that's definitely one I would want to dive into because I think it's one of his movies that just knocked me out of my seat the first time I saw it, and have revisited it several times, and I'm still like, I don't know how to kind of or where to even start, or feel like I've really even fully processed it yet. Like he's throwing so much at the viewer in that movie, again, ostensibly as a comedy as well. The tones that I think he's struck with things like Do the Right Thing, I think is probably most famously shifting from comedy to drama within the same scene there, I think is on full display in Bamboozled. But also big Sidney Lumet fan. He's doing not a parody of Network, but he's borrowing from Network pretty heavily. Same thing he did with Inside Man. He's a film geek and he's incorporating so much. I think it's maybe one reason why Bamboozled hit me the way it did was because there's so much film history also worked into it.
Yeah, I realize that I'm not even picking up on like a large portion of what's going on. Like I'm getting some of it, but like, yeah, I don't think I even, the big references like Network and
producers.
Yeah, like sure I can get that, but like there's references in there. I know I'm just like, it's too much.
Yeah. Well, catch it while you can because it's up on Criterion's channel. The DVD, as far as I know, is out of print. I paid way too much on eBay for my DVD copy because I was like, I need to own this one. Also, because there's a commentary track, which of course is now up on Criterion. So hopefully that one is parked on Criterion and will stay there because there's a lot of extra features up on Criterion channel for Bamboozled right now. Oh, so you had an inadvertent theme, you said, running through your Black female filmmaker film selection and your Spike Lee joint selection. I realized I have one too, although mine's a little thinner than yours because it's not really a theme. It's more the people that are in it. I mentioned Eve's Bayou because that was Cassie Lemon's feature film directorial debut, and Sam Jackson plays the father in that one. Sam Jackson and Cassie Lemons are both in a Spike Lee movie. One of the few features that I hadn't seen yet that I watched for this watch challenge, which was School Daze from 1988. Sam Jackson and Cassie Lemons are both in that movie together. So a very, very thin theme, but it carries over from Eve's Bayou. This one, I'd always had School Daze in the back of my head as one of those movies that it was a Spike Lee movie, Spike Lee joint that got a lot of hate when it came out because it was a musical, because it is a musical. I adore musicals, so that wasn't really a turnoff for me. It was just one of those I just hadn't gone back to. That one, and I meant to go to Get on the Bus. Was going to be the one I was going to watch for this one, but it was not streaming anywhere conveniently, and I couldn't get my hands on a physical copy that quickly. So I was like, you know what? School Days is streaming. I'll give that one a watch. And it's awesome. It's Spike at 31 years of age doing musical numbers, which I thought was actually a little odd. I wrote in my notes, it takes until the, what is it, like the 22-minute mark before we even get our first dance sequence, our first musical number. So you can be 22 minutes into it and not have a musical number. Usually with musicals, like you'll do a wow or some sort of an opening musical bit kind of early on just to let people know, one, it is a musical, but also show off the capabilities of some of your actors, some of your performers in there. So that was an interesting choice. But he has this entire movie set in an area of academic life I'm entirely unfamiliar with. It's set at a fictional, but at a historically black university, but it's a fictional university. There's a wild string of politics in why it was founded and who is funding it and who's on the board right now. But that part aside, it also deals almost exclusively with Greek life, which I'm completely unfamiliar with because I didn't go for any sort of fraternity and I wasn't around people in fraternities or sororities going through college. So I was like, okay, I guess this is how it is. And it's wildly exaggerated because that's how Spike does it. But it's an absolute blast. He is clear. I mean, coming to a 1988 film nowadays in 2021, I've read several books on Spike Lee. I've listened to a bunch of commentaries, a bunch of interviews with him. He's one of my favorite contemporary filmmakers in America. So I'm aware that he's a huge musical fan. Guys and Dolls is a big movie that he loves. And the musical numbers that he stages in this are really, really impressive for a second feature film and also for a 31-year-old to be directing. The one thing I would highlight is he's really good at using the long take in a musical number. And one of the benefits of using a long take in the musical number is, one, it's a bit of a show off. That's fine. Musical numbers tend to be very much very showy, but he does it in an interesting way where classic musicals will use a lot of long shots because they want to let the dancers and the performers, you want to highlight the choreography, you want to highlight the performances, but you also want to highlight that you know how to place a camera and you know how to film a scene. Mm-hmm. And he does that. There's a whole beauty shop dance sequence between two I think they're rival sororities. They're at least rival groups of girls that are dancing. One who are going for natural hair, and others who want to either use I'm not gonna even attempt the terminology because I barely know my own male hair products that I use, but like straightening your hair or using a wig or a weave versus just what your natural hair is. And it's this back and forth dance sequence between the two groups, but it's almost like a contained West Side Story dance sequence where like they're almost dance fighting to prove their different points back and forth to each other. But he uses lots of long takes. It's a full-on musical number that at the end they're almost like presenting themselves to the camera as like, they're all in like the one big group pose, like, there we go, ta-da, there's the end of the sequence, and you're ready to start clapping. And then they just snap your fingers, they're right back to reality, and the scene goes on. That might be off-putting to people that don't like musicals. I don't know. I thought it was great. He definitely knows what he's doing. And I think it's pretty ballsy that you pick your second feature film as like, okay, I'm making my musical. I think that speaks to just how much he enjoys the genre and how much he has affection for the greats in the genre. I don't know if it's necessarily like one of the greats as far as musicals go, but there's moments where you're just like, wow, that's impressive. The only problem I would say is I hate 80s R&B music, and like kind of the torch song is a huge element in musicals, and that's in there, and I'm just like, I can't stand this song. It's not a bad song, it's just not my genre, so I was just kind of rolling my eyes a few times at some of the musical choices.
Well, shame on you.
I know.
we got to work on you in the 80s.
It's growing on me. Separate topic, but I've been going through 80s horror directed by female filmmakers. I've been going through 80s shitty action movies. We mentioned Red Scorpion on a previous episode, 80s action films. So I'm working on it.
You'll get there.
Yeah, I'll get there.
How I learned to just relax and love the 80s.
Parts of the 80s.
Fair enough.
You're not going to get me into Devo. You're not going to get me into New Wave.
Oh man,
it's just not going to happen, man. But
this podcast is over. No, I'm kidding.
And then we had our fourth category, which was our wild card category. The ideas we threw out were blaxploitation. We had the films of Bill Gunn, William Greaves. We got Charles Burnett. What did you jump into, Isaac?
So, I had some plans. I mean, there's some auteurs who are just part of lists that I have from different decades, right? And I figured this would be an opportunity to do it. And I didn't actually. I thought I was going to go for Bill Gunn, and I thought I was going to go for Charles Burnett, and it's been sort of a rough month in a lot of ways, personally. And in some ways, I wasn't up for deep soap operas, which is actually what a lot of those movies are. I wasn't quite ready to feel as much as I felt like a lot of that would do to me. So I ended up actually going for a different auteur that I've been meaning to explore more of, which is Gordon Parks.
Oh yeah,
most famous for Shaft, obviously, but actually, something of a Renaissance genius figure, right?
Oh yeah.
And so I finally watched The Learning Tree, which I've been meaning to watch since the summer. It's part of my very long list of 60s movies that were left over from our summer of the 60s.
Yes.
And it is a fascinating movie.
Yeah.
This is Gordon Parks, successful and honored photojournalist. His career as composer, poet, and author has brought him worldwide recognition. His music, like the music you're hearing, has been performed by symphony orchestras in New York, Philadelphia, Venice, and Munich. His books have been published in 9 languages. The 15th and youngest child of a Kansas farmer, he told of how it was growing up in his best-selling novel, The Learning Tree. And now, Gordon Parks has returned to the town where he lived it, and there made that story into a motion picture.
Like it's really not. It's not really what I in some tonally it's really interesting. It goes from like this sort of idyllic, this sort of placid idyllicness, right? Which sort of invokes sort of, what is it, in Kansas? It's on the Great Plains, and it's not in the Deep South, right? So it's interesting because
it's Kansas in the 20s.
Yeah, it's Kansas in the 20s, and it's interesting because you can tell it's not the Deep South because the racial lines are things are segregated and the racial lines are brutal and hard, but like not in the way that you would have it in like deep Jim Crow, or it doesn't feel that way, right?
Right.
But it's also like not the North. It's actually an environment you're not used to seeing the racial politics of.
Very much so. Yeah.
And so they're both looser and harder. And it's sort of this, the colors like pop to more than you would expect. And sort of it feels almost saccharine when you first watch it, the first part of the film.
Yes.
But that is all setting you up for hard choices and difficult morality under a situation, in a system in which, for instance, if a black man were to kill a white man, not to talk about the whole plot, you could, people could be lynched. There are consequences beyond.
Oh yeah.
Simple morality. And
even like the sheriff character too, like it's not even just lynch, but like he'll just take you out.
Yeah, he'll just murder, and there won't be consequences for it.
Right. Because he's law.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's it's an amazing movie, but it's not. I wasn't sure what to expect, and it's kind of unique. I mean, just tonally, it's unique.
Yeah.
But I do think it shows the power of sort of racial hierarchy to shape life in very particular ways.
But then overriding that whole idea that these characters are obviously dealing with, there's also like it centers on I want to say like a teenage kid, right?
He's
Maybe like
15.
14,
He's 15.
Okay, yeah. But it's the idea of like his parents are also trying to instill in him like a strong moral compass of do the right thing. Well, not to make a Spike Lee reference, but like to do the right thing, kind of. See, I don't want to do spoilers either, but to do the right thing, kind of regardless of the race of the individual,
right?
And then also like, but what does that mean as far as consequences in a world where like, yeah, but that's a thing, like that's
you can't actually get out of this system.
Yeah, right.
And I think you see sort of class politics. You see this sort of
for sure
the difference between his family. They're sharecroppers, but they're established, right? And they're respected. They're respectable to white people, right?
Right.
they're sharecroppers. The mother, works in the judge's home as a nanny, but like they're respectable compared to other other black youth who are not as much. I mean, it's you see in a lot of ways it is a profile of small town life.
Yeah, but it's not the not clean. How am I going to say this? It's not the easy, clean film narrative racism you get if you set it in the South.
Yes, well, that's what's interesting to me, right?
Yes,
that's what I mean about it being like a unique environment compared to where we usually would see this in the South, or if we saw in the North, it would be in an urban environment. And this is not like that. It's similar. Right. There's a lot of recognizable things, but there's it's just not quite as rigid.
Right.
The relations are a little more careful, or a little more open, and yet at the same time, violence just lurks beneath the surface.
Right. Yeah, I mean, it's ready to get real shitty real quick. But it was also interesting too, because like when I watched it over the summer, and I mentioned I think on our summer '60s movies, my first reaction was like, I feel like this is the American classic people should be watching instead of To Kill a Mockingbird, because it felt like it was kind of touching on similar themes, but To Kill a Mockingbird is more from the white perspective, and this is Gordon Parks exploring these, and I think in a much more deep and interesting way. But at the same time, that first 10-15 minutes, you kind of have to get through almost the first maybe 20 minutes, because like it felt to me when I was first watching it as like, this feels like a made for TV movie. What is going on here? Like the aesthetic was just very, very odd at first, but it's setting it up for a reason.
Yeah, no, you have to get through that and realize, there's a reason. I think that is a really good comparison to Kill a Mockingbird, and I think it, it fits with sort of what we've said about sort of in the past about, the sorts of movies that were made for white consumption dealing with race versus films.
Yes.
Films that were made either by black artists or some white artists. We can think of a few that are not like that. And that they're not movies that give you comfortable answers, but it is literally feels like it's playing in the same with some of the same themes, but doing it from a much deeper, less sort of white liberal space.
Right. Yeah. Through Gordon Parks' lens, which is amazing.
Which is amazing, and of course, it's. I don't know to what degree it's autobiographical. It's clearly to a certain degree, right?
Good question. Yeah, I don't know his personal biography that well to know what that was.
I mean, I think if I remember correctly, I read a little bit. I mean, I think it is. Okay. I don't know if it's exactly what happened in his life, but like, I believe that's where he's from.
I mean, he's the writer, producer, director, composer. Like it's about as auteur as you can get. This is Gordon Parks right here.
Right. Yeah. It's his life. I should say I actually also watched a movie, which happened to be in Criterion. I really use Criterion a lot for this month.
They've got good shit.
They really loaded up. But I watched Thomason and Bushrod, which is by Gordon Parks Jr., Gordon Parks' son, from 1974. So actually only 5 years later. And it is it stars Max Julien, who was Johnny in
Uptight, come on.
In Uptight, which we just did a two-parter on. Yeah. Sorry, like I said, it's been a long.
Get out of my brain.
Yeah, I can. Right, so it's sort of interesting watching him in this, and then it also stars Vanetta McGee, who we're going to be talking a lot about when we cover The Great Silence in our next episode.
Yeah.
So, and this is a bank robber couple on the run, except they're black in the Old West.
Well, it's like early 1900s, isn't it?
It's early 1900s.
Yeah.
And it's good. I don't think, it's not quite as good as some of the other movies we talked about, but it's perfectly entertaining, and it carries this stuff off well. I mean, it's a blaxploitation Western. So that was my little dip in there. And I hadn't really planned on watching it, but I just saw it there and I was like, oh, and then I saw who was in it and I was like, all right, I should watch this because I want to follow these actors in what they're doing.
I remember this one being like summarized, or like hearing somebody like, oh, it's like Black Robin Hood story, but set in the West.
Yeah, I mean, it's totally that. I mean, part of what's interesting is they spend a lot of their time and nearly get entrapped by this, basically giving money to the interracial sort of poor of the West, sort of
Well, that's a
dealing
no-no.
with.
Come on.
Right. They also do a lot of bickering. It's actually a little bit too much. It actually gets kind of unpleasant. Like, there was sort of mean. It was like, I enjoyed it, but it was sort of like, I don't know, like, you guys just like need some marriage counseling or something. I don't know. No, like, they're not married, but
That's
like, it's
funny.
like,
Yeah.
But it's got good atmosphere. It's well done. It's perfectly entertaining. And if you're sort of into sort of that era of sort of black film sort of pushing the limits and
Yes.
sticking it to the man, it's worth checking out.
Absolutely. It's also one of only 2 movies that Max Julian wrote. Oh shoot, I'm forgetting the other one. The classic, Cleopatra Jones.
He wrote Cleopatra Jones?
He wrote both of Yeah, he was co-writer on Cleopatra Jones.
Oh, wow.
And also, I know we're going to talk about Vanetta McGee with Great Silence, but it wasn't what I was going to mention for the show, but I watched Detroit 9000 because I was going through the Rolling Thunder. It was like a boutique label that Tarantino ran in the 90s, putting out movies that he loved or restoring movies that he loved. And Detroit 9000 was one of those. And then she popped up and I was like, oh my God, I'm going to be watching you again in Great Silence here in just a few weeks for the podcast. So she's just, another one of those accidental through lines throughout everything that we're watching currently here. But I'll have to cue that one up because I've not seen that one. And knowing that it's streaming somewhere, it's just a click away. So I will have to check that one out.
You know what I didn't realize until I watched this movie?
What's that?
It was Vanetta McGee is also the female lead in Blackula.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, it just didn't hit me.
Wow.
Yeah.
I need to take a look at her filmography then, because that's popping up in all kinds of stuff I'm watching.
Yeah, she's popping up in a lot of stuff, and it's like these are that's just it. You actually look at her filmography, and there's a lot of really good stuff in there.
Mm-hmm.
Because she's also into Sleep with Anger.
Oh wow. Well, so I'd forgotten we mentioned on the show during our Summer 60s series talking about when we talked about Charles Burnett, and there was I'm fascinated by regional filmmaking a lot of times, and one of the areas of regional filmmaking I hadn't really dove into or explored too much was what's called like the LA Film Rebellion, which was UCLA film students back in the I think it's like early 70s through the early 80s or so. It was actually, I think I have it here from their website. It was a group of African-American students entered the UCLA School of Theater, Film, and Television, mainly specially recruited under a concerted ethno-communications initiative, that's their term, designed to be responsive to communities of color, including Asian American, Chicano, Native American communities. And so that in this setting, they'd be given access to the equipment, instruction, all the things that would come with being in an academic program. And that also eventually distribution and marketing mechanisms of mainstream film practice, which it was hoped would turn out to be enriching, their needs as artists, but also it would give an inroad to the industry as well. And I hadn't really ever looked at this LA Film Rebellion too in-depthly. As we mentioned, we were doing, what was the Charles Burnett short we did, Several Friends. We were like, holy shit, this is your student film? Okay,
Mm-hmm.
I need to see what's going on here. Okay, so that's actually kind of a terrible preface because I didn't look at anything from Charles Burnett, but he did operate the camera on the movie I wanted to focus on, which was Welcome Home, Brother Charles from 1975.
You done the man's time. Now you're gonna do ours.
Hey, baby, what's happening? Hey, man, you telling me the white man let the biggest dope push in all of sunny side in California out on the streets again? Hey, baby, damn!
And I'll take it off.
Oh, baby, that's a deal.
Dirty, slimy bastard! That's why I meet a man the first chance I get.
Welcome home, Brother Charles. A motion picture about the way it is and the way some people think it should be.
That kind of hatred brings on mania.
Look, I didn't come here to be called a maniac, Doctor. Now, a man damn near cuts my manhood off. Now, what am I supposed to do? Nothing?
this was a filmmaker, Jama Fanaka, Jamaafanaka, Jama Fanaka, who I was wholly unfamiliar with, which is like some of my most favorite things are just like, oh my gosh, filmmaker I'm totally unfamiliar with. I want to dive in. I want to see what's going on here. So he did, and I focus on this movie specifically because of our wow factor we got from Charles Burnett's Several Friends. So like, this was a movie. Okay, so Jama Fanaka in presumably 74, because the movie came out in 75. He produced, he wrote, he directed, he edited, and wrote the theme song or theme music for Welcome Home, Brother Charles, while he was an undergrad studying film at UCLA, and shot this movie only on weekends using the equipment from the department for 17 months on the weekends. It's a wonder this movie makes any sense at all, let alone the fact that it's actually kind of knock you out of your seat brilliant. So all of that said, also Charles Burnett was camera operator because they were film students together at the exact same time. The basic plot here you've got is the actor Marlo Monte. He plays Charles Murray, the titular character, Brother Charles. After wrongfully doing time for murder, Charles Murray seeks revenge on the racist law enforcement system and the detective specifically who framed him and sent him away, to prison on its own. There are too many things to spoil in this movie, so I won't spoil anything. But it's operating in the revenge movie tropes, and Jama was clearly aware of like blaxploitation as a genre, so it does operate with blaxploitation tropes and everything in there. But like, he's kind of totally fucking with conventions and what he can get away with in making this movie. No, that's too much of a spoiler. This movie's just so full of surprises. It's absolutely worth finding out. It looks okay. So one of the things that sends him to prison in the first place is the cops pick him up. They frame him for this thing that he didn't do, for a murder that he didn't commit. And there's a scene where one cop, who they're both white cops, one cop leaves the car. They go to this specific alley where they clearly reference this is where they fuck with people they've arrested. Like, they'll rough them up before taking him to the precinct. So they take him to this area because the one cop is just livid and he wants to beat the fuck out of Charles. And so the quote unquote nicer white cop like leaves the car. It's just kind of like a Jeep. It's not an official cop car. And Charles is handcuffed, and this cop just starts punching him and just throwing out racial epithets after racial epithet, and it's brutal. And Charles is just like, "Fuck you!" He's still spitting in his face. He is fighting like everything he's got, but he's handcuffed. And then he pulls out a knife, and there's literally like this emasculation scene of a black man by white police officers. And then when he goes to prison, they didn't really have the budget to shoot in a prison, so it's still photographs with this awesome sound mix where you're not sure if he's being haunted or if he's trying to like invite spirits in. Like, it's a really kind of just surreal hallucinatory prison sequence. And then he gets out, and the movie just gets even more bonkers from there. And it doesn't go off the rails, but it goes into places where you're like, wait, what are we doing now? He starts seducing like the white women wives of all these cops. Like, it's really crazy. Like, he's just rolling the dice very seriously on this plot, and goes into areas where you're like, well, I didn't think that was going to be in this movie. It's an amazing surprise of a movie. And if you do enjoy physical media, I would recommend buying the movie, because you also, if you buy it on DVD, you get his second feature, MMA, EMMA, it's her name, Emma May, M-A-E, from 76, that completely co-ops a whole another section of the blaxploitation genre, and even involves like a crazy heist at one point. I don't know. They're both just like stellar movies that you start off the movie with a certain tone and a certain expectation of it. And he is just such a master storyteller that he takes you through this entire story, and it ends in a place where you're like, well, I did not see that coming. I did not know where it's such a wonderful discovery along the way that he's only made a few movies. And those two are for sure highlights for me. And the other ones are worth seeking out. I think his most famous one is probably Penitentiary, which is like full-on blaxploitation prison drama. But then he also in 1992 made a movie called Street Wars, where a young man takes over a crack dealing drug dealer outfit because he has like paragliders and he can fly over the streets.
Oh, okay.
Like, it's why not, you know? but he doesn't have a ton of films. He did Penitentiary and 2 sequels, MMA, Welcome Home Brother Charles, and Street Wars. That's all we got. But it was one of those where just like it's such a total discovery of just like this is exactly what I was looking for. I just didn't know this is what I was looking for. And that whole LA Film Rebellion, like it has Charles Burnett there. It has Jama Fanaka's in there. Was Bill Gunn part of that too? I can't remember what his background was.
I mean, he's in LA. I don't know if he was specifically about that.
Yeah, I'm not sure he's there, but I mean, anyway, it's a fantastic fantastic group of filmmakers. Actually, and I'll put a link in the show notes. UCLA has a PDF I found on their website where they did a retrospective, I think in the late 90s or early 2000s, that includes all the student films, all the short, like tons of other filmmakers that were all there working together. And I was just like, oh my God, like that's, if you're heading off to film school, like that's your dream, right? Like that's the situation you want to end up in, where like it's a supportive environment. It's a whole group of people that are kind of consciously trying to start a film movement, basically. And it's really fascinating. So, but once again, apologies to Charles Burnett. I'm going to get there. I'm completely hooked on this, the mindset, the camaraderie that was there, and seeing stuff that he worked on. I clearly need to jump into, because I do have easy streaming access to his films and see the rest of the Charles Burnett work that is out there and available that I need to catch up on.
So that was just it. I know I intended to deal with that particular problem and watch a bunch of Charles Burnett, and you probably intended to, and neither of us did it. And
no good reason why.
And for no good reason. I have to mention one other movie, which I think we are going to cover in May for May Day. But this once again, it's another Criterion movie. I don't normally depend on Criterion quite this much. But right, they program really well.
They do.
But I want to give a brief shout out, but I think we're gonna come back to this when we do our May Day episode, right? But The Killing Floor, which is the first movie by Bill Duke.
Bill Duke, yeah.
One of our great 80s action supporting actors, as well as an accomplished director. And there's this first movie. It was originally for PBS, and it looks like it, right? Like it doesn't, it's from the mid 80s. It's from 84, and it's based off of the real life experience of a black Southern, probably sharecropper originally, who traveled to Chicago during World War I when a lot of labor was needed. Got into the meatpacking industry, was involved in attempted interracial labor organizing, which is of course incredibly difficult. And it's a very good movie, and it's a very good labor movie. And I think it's probably one of the ones that we'll cover for our May Day episode. But I thought I would mention that it is up streaming, and it's not anywhere else. Like it's never shown anywhere else other than like PBS in the mid 80s, I guess. So
right.
That is definitely worth checking out. If you're interested in the history of the labor movement. I mean, literally, it ends when the guy's journal ended. Like, that's it.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. Like, it's like, well, we don't know it literally just says we don't know what happened next.
The end. Close the book.
I mean, he kept going, but yeah.
Yeah. So with March right around the corner, we wanted to announce, in case anybody wants to watch along with our watch challenge. The next watch challenge number 3, is one of the things I happen to have been enjoying this past weekend, because I had a little bit of time off and I had rediscovered my love for commentary tracks on movies that I love. It started because I was going to rewatch Inside Man, the Spike Lee heist thriller, after watching School Days. And I was like, oh, I've never listened to this commentary track. I got the DVD and I was like, oh shit, this is on here. I should listen to this. So I did. And I was like, oh my God, you know what? In the age of like everything is streaming everywhere, I kind of feel like the bonus features that were like crucial to me becoming like the film geek that I am, like bonus materials were like a huge thing. I know a buddy of mine, we always joke like he grew up with HBO and I didn't. Like he talked about how he would record the HBO. They would have like a 15 to 30 minute like behind the scenes of how a movie was made before like that movie was coming out in the theaters. Back in the 80s and 90s. And so I was like, oh, let's kind of focus a little bit on the bonus feature. So one of the challenges is to enjoy the commentary track on either like a movie you enjoy, or hey, maybe you want to roll the dice, listen to a commentary track while watching a movie that you've never seen before for the first time. But like enjoy that, the richness that's there with like the special features. You get like a filmmaker, possibly with other people on the crew, other artists that they worked with, giving you basically like film school in a 2-hour period on their film. So I'm gonna try and find a commentary track that I've always. And if you go with the classic stuff too, there's one I know because I have the Citizen Kane I just ordered that has like a film historian track where you're like some film historian can tell you all about it. So like there's a lot of options there. It doesn't always have to be the people that made the film. There's a lot of interesting commentary tracks on like the Vinegar Syndrome and Arrow DVDs of just like people that love the movie that are doing their own commentary track on the film, even though they had nothing to do with making it.
Sometimes I actually prefer the historian track to the filmmaker track.
I think they can be more focused sometimes because sometimes the filmmaker ones just kind of get a little rambly.
Right.
Yeah.
So our next category. So here's the thing: this is a film and politics podcast, right? We're dealing with political themes, and this month we will have an episode dealing with issues of ecology and apocalypse, the eco-apocalypse, which considering the fires, floods, plagues, and apparently freezing over Texas that we've sort of experienced this year. I mean, this is sort of our future. So the next category is to check out eco-apocalypse film. I would say the 70s are sort of the golden age of that, but there's plenty of others. And
watch it. I was gonna say now watching current news doesn't count.
Sorry,
that was supposed to be a joke. It's not that funny.
It's really it's not.
Yeah.
It's really oh god. Be the anyway.
So, that is the reality. But yeah, the 70s is kind of it's separate. It's like a niche subgenre within the disaster film genre. They're out there. They're interesting. So yeah, and we're prepping an episode about that. So I'm gonna watch the movies we're gonna watch for that episode, but there's a few other ones I really wanted to watch too to kind of get a full flavor of the genre. Number 3 on our watch challenge for this month is going to be a ninja film. There's that's a very kind of broad category. There's a few that I've been looking at. I've been looking at the filmography of the Canon as a distribution and a producing label in the 70s and 80s, and there's some ninja films in there. I was like, I need to watch some of those because I remember going through like the 36 Chambers of Shaolin and some of like the kung fu movies last summer. I was like, I hadn't really watched too much of this, and there's like such a, I don't know, like I find such a joy in like actual choreography.
Mm-hmm.
That I'm looking forward to jumping in. Not necessarily that it's a great movie, but there's a lot of ninja films out there.
And extra bonus if you can make it political.
That's true too for the ninja film.
Yeah, I mean that's
because
the thing is that there's a lot of kung fu movies that are either very political or you can make political. They're either fighting like I don't know the Manchu dynasty or they're fighting like Japanese invasion or whatever, right? Like you can work with it. There's like probably contemporary, but like the ninja stuff, I don't know. I've never seen a ninja one that's like political other than like the racial politics of having white boys in the 80s be ninjas.
Well, I'm cracking my knuckles. I'm going to give it a shot.
Let's do it.
Yeah. And then our bonus category, we like to have a bonus category for those that want to go past just like the 3 films in a month kind of mark. This one I've been meaning to do for a long time, and I was like, oh God, we're doing watch challenges. This is perfect for this. I want to listen to a score for a movie that I haven't seen before watching the movie. And the one that piqued my interest was I was looking at a list of like best scores. It was like, the 40 best scores of all time. I was like, okay, well, I'll bite. I got 10 minutes. I'll click on this in my, during lunch and see what they have. And one of the ones that was on there was that Herbie Hancock did the score for the original Charles Bronson Death Wish movie, which I've never seen. And I was like, oh, and I we're living through pandemic and whatnot. I have some work from home shifts that I just will constantly play film scores. And I was like, you know what? I'm going to throw in some film scores and get to know the music before I see the movie. It's like a reverse of like, I've read the book and now I'm going to watch the movie that's based on the book. I'm going to get familiar with the film score and then watch the film.
That's a really interesting choice for a category. I also think that discovering that through Death Wish,
well, I'm not saying I'm not guaranteeing I'm going to do that one, but I just thought that was intriguing.
I mean, God, if I can think of like outside of like Dirty Harry, what epitomizes like white counter-revolutionary panic in the 70s?
Right. Right.
More than
Wait, is
like
Death Wish 70s or 80s?
Death Wish is 70s. I mean, I think the
Okay.
series goes into the 80s, but like,
Oh, it just goes on and on. And then they remade it with fucking Bruce Willis very recently. So
yeah.
Good old Eli Roth.
Well, it is funny doing a Death Wish remake right now. Is one, we're sort of past that wave. Obviously, white reactionary politics and crime panic has not gone away, but it doesn't really. Well, it's both very current on their side of the line, but it's also like pretty out of step in the way that like in the 70s and 80s that would have been deeply in step.
Right.
So it's like,
right.
It's sort of like who is this for? Like, we know who it's for, but like that's not actually the demographic that's going to make a hit movie.
Right. But I'm fairly sure if I do go with Death Wish, though, I might be able to pick out some politics from that film.
Oh, but, really?
We'll see. We'll see. But before we get to, we'll obviously do our wrap up watch list or watch episode at the end of the next month. But Isaac, what have we got up for our very next episode?
So we are doing our next deep dive, and is one of the ones that I think both of us have looked forward to for a very long time. We are doing the great, maybe the greatest. It's debatable, but it could be. It could be argued the greatest spaghetti western, and certainly the greatest one by far that wasn't made by Sergio Leone. Sergio Carbucci's The Great Silence from 1968.
The other Sergio.
The other Sergio. There's multiple Sergio. There's like 3 at least.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah, Alex Cox talks about that in some of the Great Silence bonus features. It's like there's the 3 Sergios. It was like, oh, yeah, that's handy because I've only known the 2.
Yeah, no, I'd heard that there's 3, but I actually haven't, explored thoroughly. But this is, this is a great masterpiece, and we've been looking forward to it for a long time.
Yeah. Yes. But before we sign off, join us next time. Be sure to rate and review the show in whatever podcast app you are using. And if you were enjoying the show or you've seen a particular episode, like, oh my God, they did that great Conan episode. My buddy loves Conan. Pass it on. It never hurts to tell a friend or 2 or 3. We are also up and running on, Twitter, Instagram, blah, blah, blah. The usual social media apps. If you want to give us a follow there, we're posting stuff that's, kind of tangentially tied into the show. So there's extra stuff up there if you want to give us a like, a follow, whatever. And until next time, I am Aaron Spears.
And I'm Isaac Miller. And stay safe out there, especially if, your power grid has collapsed because of decades of austerity and deregulation, and you're having to boil water, and the ceiling's collapsed, and oh, man. Yeah, eco-apocalypse themes. Oof. All right, yeah, stay safe.
A little close to home.
Yeah, right?